I filled myself up with so much love with me that I kind of felt like I was in this place that was unfuckwithable, because I'm like, I'm good, right? Like, if I just have me and music and journal and nature, I'm so deeply fulfilled and I'm so happy that anything else outside of that just feels like a bonus.
Welcome to the Deja Blu podcast, where we believe that living a life of magic can be the default. Join us each week as we playfully and authentically dive into the mysteries of life and explore what it truly means to be human. From spirituality, wellness, and all things taboo, we don't hold anything back. So without further ado, let's let the magic unfold. Hello, you beautiful humans. Welcome back to another episode of the Deja Blu podcast. I'm really giggly and excited about today's episode. I've been able to have the very intimate, deep blessing of getting to know this woman on a very personal level. She's been a guide, a sister, a mentor, a muse, inspiration, and an opportunity for me to meet myself in so many ways that I would not have been possible without her reflection. And so the fact that I get to I'm actually kind of mind blown that this is the first time that I'm having this woman on the podcast. I don't understand why that is, but also trusting in the timing and the moment that it's finally locked in. And so my heart is doing baby backflips to have Vylana Marcus on the podcast. And outside of just the way that she has shown up in my life and brought so much beauty and inspiration, and also somebody that is one of those rare beings that can really meet me in the shamanic space and shares such similar excitements about life, similar ways of weaving and perceiving the world, similar offerings, and yet simultaneously at the same time such unique medicine that when we combine our forces, the complementary essence of the two of it, it's just like wildly unstoppable. I feel like we're a powerful individual, but when sisters really that are on the same page and resonating in a similar frequency and then come together as inspiration and collide and combine our offerings, then we're powerful individually, unstoppable together. And that's really what it feels like when I get to weave in the ways with this beautiful, beautiful, majestic human. She is a sound alchemist, but not just any sort of sound alchemist, just like playing the bowls. She's listening on a level that is so deep that she can actually tune into the very unique signature of the individuals in the space. And from that level of listening and her hundreds of hours of mastery of being able to actually create a library of light with sound frequencies in her consciousness over time spent, she then pulls that information based on what she's reading in the space and then delivers a unique sound healing specifically for the person in the space, designed to activate them in a way on a somatic level to unlock whatever it is that needs to be unlocked to align themselves with the highest essence. I mean, that is not just a sound healing. This is revolutionary healing on the quantum level and a somatic level. It's a big deal. So there's that. And then also she is a coach at the Fit for Service program, and has brought her medicine and her weavings into that space, which is supporting hundreds of people all over the world through their year-long program. And also she is a dear sister and somebody that has been there with me through some really challenging conversations and been there with me through some really beautiful ecstatic bliss. But on the other side of every single moment, we've just deepened our friendship, and that's to me what sisterhood is. So it is truly an honor to welcome Vylana Marcus to the podcast.
Wow. What do I even say after that? I'm so happy to be here with you. It's wild that we are so deep and close and all the things that we are. And this is our first one-on-one sit-down conversation, and the timing could not be more perfect. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense, but also it makes a lot of sense in the degree of being able to actually have a conversation from a place of really nutrient-dense time spent. Because the greatest ceremony that there is life. And you and I have done life together.
Yeah.
We've traveled all over the world. We've sat in ceremonies. We've broken down. We've been witnessed in our, what I like to call the column. It's like the part of me that I just don't deem really that worthy. And I'm like, how could anybody love me? And I drag my leg into my room and I'm like, it's my precious, don't come in here, I'm dissolving. And we witnessed each other in our column and just infused love into those spaces. Even when it's been tough, even when there's been contraction, the theme consistently has been I'm here to love you at the best of my capacity, and I'll be here with you in the fire of transmutation, so that whatever remains, I'm here to build with you from that place. That's been a constant theme, and that is what true sisterhood is for me. So it makes sense now the way we're doing the podcast, because I feel like there's so much.
There's so much.
We're sitting here.
I think I've gone through at least like 100 deaths since we've been friends that you've been like directly part of, like, you know, supportive in, you know, like, I mean, literally the woman that I was when you met me I love that woman, and I don't even fully remember her because so many things have happened since then, and you've just been like my true sister through the thick of it all, through the pain of it all, through the glory of it all, and the majesty. Like, it's just been, you know, like you're my girl, Blue.
I am. Yeah, I would love to go into that, what you're talking about of like, okay, there's been 1 million deaths since we first connected. And when you say that, I think back to the podcast that I did with Aubrey when you were sitting there at Bianagia's house. And you were just off camera, and I was so nervous. I felt like a little baby kitten. I was like, you know, and you were the one that saw me. Like, I was hiding, I was quiet, I didn't want to interrupt. I felt like my presence, like, wasn't fully claiming my presence. And there was a moment we were sitting outside and we were having a conversation with the dear brother Matthew Hussey, who was there. And I had said something, and instantly you kind of just turned to me, and it was almost like I'd just gone onto your radar.
Oh, yeah.
And then from that moment, I think there was definitely me pedestaling you and Aubrey. Like, I had done that in my head. Like, I've just been like, oh, it's Aubrey Marcus and Vylana Marcus. Like, I'm just gonna like put them over there in some sort of like hierarchical like pedestaling that I did and placed on it. So there was like a nervousness for me being in you guys' presence and feeling so seen by you in that moment, and feeling so acknowledged and appreciated. And then the curiosity for keep asking me questions. And then after the curiosity, there was then you inviting me into things. And then after that, then it was placing my name into Aubrey's field to have me on him on my podcast, and like nudging it in that direction. And then you came on my podcast with Azria.
Yeah.
And so like there was just a series of things that have woven me to get to this point years later, where now I have like a soul brother in Aubrey. I have a soul sister in you, it's like familia. And we've traveled around the world and gone through all of these experiences. And so I just want to reflect back on that moment, that in that moment was the very thing that introduced me to this entire world, because of your ability to see me.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I would go so far as to say, as I'm sure everyone is listening, is just absolutely enamored, in awe, inspired, activated by you, you know? So having that moment where I got to really hear your voice, it was like my heart was just like, wow, who is this woman? Because I feel like there's so much more here, and I really want to heed that listening and see what it is. And, you know, after just like that first meeting, it felt like it's like those moments when it feels like soul family immediately. And I love when that happens, because there's not this like separation of, oh, I haven't known you that long, so I feel like I need to get to know you. And there was none of that. It was just like, like, oh, okay, we're here and we're doing life together now. Like, here's all these epic things that we're doing, and you have to be there. And here is the community that we serve. And it would be an honor to have your medicine and your voice be a presence and an ally in those spaces. And so, I mean, it feels like, I mean, pretty immediately that we have done this so many times. That was like one of the first conversations that we had, was like, we've done this a lot of times.
What does that mean to you in the sense of like, done this a lot of times? Because from my experience, it's a familiarity. It's like it's a muscle memory in the body. So would you break down, like, when you meet someone and you know, oh, I've done this like many times, what does that activate within your body for then to feel like, oh, we've done this before?
Yeah, there's just like there's a sense of, I mean, first there's just this sense of comfortability, but also it's like something actually feels like there's a code exchange that's happening where just merely by being in the presence of another and feeling, you know, when you get into the conversations, no matter how, you know, basic or deep they go, it's just like, wow, there's like, we see the world in the same way, and we've come from entirely different paths, entirely different countries, entirely different plant medicine ceremonies and wounding and families and all the things, and yet we're like really looking out at a shared horizon that just feels really right. And it's like I would describe it as just like an aliveness and excitement in the body, almost like we, you know, on a soul plane is like the way I like to imagine it. Like we made the agreement that, you know, at this time when it mattered most, that we would find each other. And then feeling all the ways that we can weave to fully fulfill our dharma on this planet. You know, like it feels like, oh, like I can't do this the same without you. So it almost even feels like there's an essential nature to the allyship and to the connection. And then just like an excited desire to just continue to pour into it is how I would describe it.
I love that you say that. It's like we're looking out at the same horizon. It's exactly what it feels like, and which is the sun rising over a new era or a new way of being. And also realizing, like, if I was doing this alone, I'd feel like I'm losing my goddamn mind.
Yeah.
Look around me and
I'm
be like,
a kook. If I'm doing this just by myself, I might just be a weirdo.
but like to like look to my left and my right and be like, oh, okay, like we're good. Like we got our titties out, we got our piece paint on, we're banging our drums, we're moving in the same direction at the same time. Yeah. Life is good, the future looks beautiful, as opposed to like, oh, we're all fucked and I'm going insane. Yeah. That's literally the difference of like soul family and soul allies aligning with the mission, and also just feeling like we're doing this on our own.
Yeah, and it feels like it creates like a deeper sense of faith. A deeper sense of faith that like there is something so much more that's going on. You know, when you look out at the 3D, it's like, oh my God, like how can you come back from what's already happened even before we were here? But then to feel the love and how, you know, around 2020, it felt like that shot up a beacon of everybody coming together. I mean, some of the closest people in my life, you included, all came into my life around the same time. And it was like it felt like this moment, like the time is now. And feeling like knowing that there are other people who have lived their unique story of their own life and feel the same sense of desire to really help elevate the consciousness on this planet and do whatever it is that they can with their unique soul essence to facilitate that. And then to see that so clearly in another, in their own unique soul essence. And as you said, the power that happens when we come together, it's like, oh man, like there's a lot more happening here. There's a lot more happening here. And it really, really helps my mind to soften from any fear or worry, and my heart to just open that like, we fucking got this. Like, this is what we came here for. We were born for this. And to feel the amplification that happens in the presence of somebody else who really deeply sees you. Like, it's the greatest gift.
That is. It's literally the greatest gift I've ever received. Not like like material things are fun. Like, oh, thank you so much. Yeah. But like to be in the presence of something that genuinely actually sees you and genuinely wants to see you thrive and survive and succeed and to be in this like this deep reverence and celebration just for the essence of them winning.
For sure.
That's the greatest gift we could ever give. So for you to align with your soul family, because you're surrounded by individuals that are like, oh, we ride. Yeah. Like, this isn't just like, oh, hey, friend. No. Okay, cool. I'll see you in like 8 months. And like, hardly ever speak. And like, not really do that much. It's like, no, these humans are like an extension of your being. And I would love to hear a little bit more about your journey around this death process for you to become who you've actually always been. Right? That's the sweet paradox of all of it. It's like, we're actually born in our perfection of our essence. Then we kind of we learn a lot of stuff that is actually not our truth. Then we have to unlearn all of that stuff. And then in the unlearning on the other side of it, the unique resonance comes back again. And then that's when it attracts a soul tribe. And this is the individuals that you're surrounded by that are like, we ride like, fully to life.
Yeah.
So what has that looked like for you of the journey of unbecoming or becoming to unbecoming to then becoming again?
Yeah. I mean, I lived, let's see, I'm 35. So 6-7 years ago, before I started my spiritual journey, I lived an entirely different life. I was at the time working in LA and nightlife. I was, trying to do music. I was just like very in this kind of Hollywood world bubble, and just not at all connected to like the deeper essence of who I was. I experienced incredible emotional trauma in relationships with men, a lot of sister wounds, betrayal with women. And so I was, I was very, very mistrustful of everything. And as much as I still would, show up to relationships and I would still try to date people and I would still try to make friends, I never got so wounded that I just retracted from life. There was some part of me that believed so much in love and right relationship that I always continued to try, which is a beautiful thing, but it definitely meant like a lot more heartbreak and a lot more pain and a lot more suffering. But the suffering really felt like it was because I felt deeply, deeply alone in my life. I could be surrounded by so many people that I knew and having fun and all the things, but it was just like inside there was this like deep aching pain in my heart that didn't feel like I really belonged anywhere, like anywhere was really home to me, like anyone could really see me, because everything that life taught to me was that, I'm not really seen, I'm not really cherished, I'm not really chosen, potentially not even trusted, no matter how much I gave my love and opened my heart. So it was a completely different life, entirely different. Like it was the absolute contrast of what I experience in my life right now. And, friends were, for me, like female relationships. I had some really beautiful, really deep ones that would end in these really painful ways over things that I didn't quite understand. And that was a pattern that started, when I had my very first friend growing up, and kind of just continued in these cycles. So it never really felt like I had a sense of stability in friendships. And then with my in my past relationships with men, there was always another woman. There was cheating, there was lying. I had also gone through a period of also being a transgressor. So I don't want to just like leave that out and play like I'm victim to my past. But all of this to say that my life was not what it is now. And around when I was 29, I was in the thick of my Saturn return. And it was like everything in my life was going so brutally wrong. The part of me that's always been able to be positive and like pick myself up off the floor and always find the silver lining, always find the gratitude in the pain. It got so difficult that I just didn't feel like I could do that anymore. Like I felt like I was broken. And to top it off, my grandmother was put on hospice, and she is the matriarch of my family. And they put her on hospice, and it was like right around my birthday. So I spent I think this was going into my 29th birthday, like just in deep fear that I was going to lose my grandma on my birthday, and I would have to live that every single year. She ended up dying a few days after my birthday, and that moment, as difficult as it was and jarring, because I had never had that kind of loss in my life before. Like somebody that I loved so much, that I grew up my entire life with. I spent so many summers with my grandmother. When she got sick, I went out to Hawaii to see her as much as possible. I would like send her a juicer, or just anything that I could do to just like really support the end of her life. We became very close then. And when she passed, it actually became one of the greatest gifts of my life, because it felt like for the first time I started to question, like, what am I here for? What do I even believe about death? Like, where does she go? You know, I didn't believe then in religion. I grew up in, you know, going to church and Catholic church and Christian church, and it just didn't resonate for me. There were aspects of it that were beautiful, but a lot of it just didn't resonate with me. So I wasn't necessarily atheist, but I had no sense of spirituality or soul or purpose or dharma at all. And I didn't have anyone around me who was modeling anything like that. And so it was a very confusing time for me. But what I decided to do was to just open myself to start saying yes to life and to live for her. And that sent me on my spiritual path where, you know, I was guided to go to Burning Man, which is where I met Aubrey for the very first time, at Burning Man in 2016. And he was the one that held out his hand and he saw a light in me and, you know, welcomed me into his community and invited me to do my first plant medicine ceremony. And then that was just like, I mean, my whole life kind of flipped in a 180 from there. And, you know, since I started my spiritual path, it wasn't just like love and light, you know, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm having these transcended experiences and I have a visceral feeling in my body in my first Wachuma ceremony where I'm just weeping in tears, where I understand the essence of life and how everything is connected and that I'm here to do something greater than I ever even believed. And that, you know, my mission was to really find what that was because I was very lost at the time. But, you know, having all of those like beautiful awakening moments, everything that was not in resonance with that was like starting to get pretty shook. So it was a pretty intense path, you know, for 4 years, for 4 years or so doing plant medicine and also making my way through the same types of relationships that I had always been in, even though I was evolving and learning and growing and being able to communicate in a different way and knowing myself at a deeper level. I still, the kind of patterning of how I related to relationship and love was there. And that had to get bad enough, like absolute rock bottom moment where I literally could not take living my life like that anymore. So that like chrysalis that I was in for years, you know, probably I would say like 4 years of traveling the world, spending a lot of solo time, getting into a journaling practice, reading all the books, like just like starting to integrate really soulful practices into my life. I was in the chrysalis and it was like everything that I had been, I was just getting like melted into goo. And it was like pulling at me in all these different directions constantly, to where I bumped up against that moment where it's like, I can't live like this anymore. I can't live in these relationships where I don't feel safe. I don't feel empowered. I don't feel seen. In that one particularly, I felt so gaslighted with my intuition. It was just like all of those patterns, the relational patterns, had to come up and out. And so when I hit that rock bottom moment, I really decided to start to look deeper at what was happening within me that was continuing to attract those types of relationships to my life. And you know, again, even though I had already been on a spiritual path, getting to a really, really deep and clear place of probably really for the first time of my life, asking myself, like, what do I desire to experience in love? What are my basic needs? Because I am actually worthy of asking for them. I am actually worthy of asking to be safe, of asking for stability and security, of asking to, you know, not want to share my partner with another person. Because at the time I was spiritually bypassing and trying to navigate a 3-way dynamic with another woman and my partner. So I just started asking myself those kinds of things, like, where do I actually have boundaries? because I would go into anger and rage when my boundaries were crossed, because I'd never actually tuned into what they were. It was just like a continued deconstructing and dying everything that I knew about myself that was passive, that would always just be like, well, what do you want to do for dinner? I'm happy to do whatever it is you want, never actually claiming or being in tune with my own sense of desire. And so I went on another journey where I just really focused on my sovereignty. And I, at the same time, during this death, recognized that a lot of the friendships that I had, particularly with women, didn't actually really feel like soul nourishing to me. It was like there was community and we had so many beautiful experiences, but when we were at a dinner table sitting down and everyone was talking, like I was so quiet, and I always felt like I was like a black sheep or like different, because I'm really deep and I'm really emotional, and I just never really felt like I fit in necessarily. And at that time as well, as I'm going through this death, I decided like I'm going to call in the women that I feel like so seen by, that I don't have to try to like meet in, what they're interested in, or feel like we're in weird, subtle competition, or I just want to feel like I can show up and that women will see me for who I am. And no matter what happens, no matter what difficulty comes, like we'll make it through, because like we are sisters, and like those are the kinds of relationships that I want to call in. And those started showing up very quickly. As soon as I made the space for it, like they started to arrive. And at the same time, speaking to relationship, like I was in the dissolution of my former partnership that I was in before Aubrey. And I also, when I started doing all of this work to find so much more self-love, self-approval, self-worthiness, I started to feel the clarification of desire of what I wanted to experience in love at that point. And, that manifestation process was simply like, I filled myself up with so much love with me that I kind of felt like I was in this place that was unfuckwithable, because I'm like, I'm good, right? Like if I just have me and music and journal and nature, like I'm so deeply fulfilled and I'm so happy that anything else outside of that just feels like a bonus. I was no longer looking for my environment, for a relationship, for a friendship to validate to me that I was worthy of the life that I desired. And I instead was finding my own worthiness within myself, and I was self-resourcing everything that I desired. And so I, became really, really great at tuning into like what I wanted in life. Like I made that a devotional practice. Like I went from, if you asked me what I wanted, I'd be like deer in the headlights, because I was so good at just chameleoning into whatever the environment was, to actually having a devoted practice to my desire. And, I know this is getting really long, but when I was tuning into the type of love that I was ready to experience, that love didn't look like a person. It didn't look like a man making a certain amount of money. It didn't look like anything that had to do with material things. Like a lot of the times I think when people are manifesting, it's almost coming from the mind and not so much from the heart and the sensing. And I wanted to feel safe in my body and not so threatened all the time. I wanted to just feel like I really wanted to feel stability. And I wanted to feel like somebody could deeply see me for all of me and hold it, and not trying to squish me down when I got really big and, I had like a magnetic moment of fully expressing my radiance, and that wouldn't threaten them, but that they would celebrate it and tell me to burn brighter. It was those kinds of things that I felt really clear about. And I understood the clarification of my desire because I knew through the contrast exactly what I did not want. And so actually, for those of you who feel like you're in a moment of struggle, like it is such a powerful teacher, And I wouldn't go back and change anything because it forged me like the diamond of who I was meant to become. But, you know, I had to go through that lifetime of understanding the polarity of my existence. And, you know, after focusing really, really deeply on myself and my sovereignty, Aubrey showed up very quickly. I mean, he was always there. We were very, very close friends, but it finally felt like everything opened for us to actually look into what a romantic relationship looked like. And everything happened really, really quickly. And since him and I have been together, and for the first time in my life, I've really deeply experienced the sacred masculine embodied. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I experienced that with him as a friend as well. But to experience it in a romantic relationship, it's a very, very healing thing. And you know, we are so in love with each other, but also so just in love, as Peter Crone would call it. And I feel like that has created this like beacon, you know, like our vibration is, you know, it's joyful, it's compassionate, it's unconditional with people and with each other. And it feels like that is this vibration that is magnetizing everything else that is the right resonance. And so since we've been together, our community, our tribe has really been forming. And it's been so easeful to where, you know, before him and I were together and we were in other relationships, like there was community and there was so many beautiful things that happened. I will not say that wasn't the case, but it always just kind of seemed like there was something that there were just kind of kinks, you know, that would happen quite often. And as soon as, you know, our alignment and our relationship like fully came together, and how that impacted everything in Aubrey's world with the team and how he shows up and how he is energetically and he doesn't get sick anymore. And, you know, we were just like dripping in so much love from so many people. It's almost actually difficult to manage how many friends that we have and people that we love. Like it's a lot. And it's wild to reflect on going from, I've literally always felt like I've been alone all of my life. And you were there for that death ceremony where I really, really went into that aspect of my wounding and my broken heart. Being so deeply alone in life to the abundance of the richest relationships that, you know, 6 years ago to me would be unimaginable. Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't even know how to pray for how good things are in my life now. That was very long. But
I mean, it was a broad brushstroke of a question. Yeah. Like I was like, so tell me about your journey of becoming, unbecoming, and becoming again, which is basically your entire life. Yeah. So please take up as much space as you need to tell us your journey so we have a little bit of context of what it has taken. I mean, that's even just like a snippet, really, of the grand scale of the amount of initiations, death, rebirths, heartbreak, breakthroughs. I mean, all of the things that have happened, the ceremonies, the amount of self-awareness that is required to actually take ownership of one's internal landscape to therefore actually genuinely see a shift externally based off of the self-love, because ultimately everything really comes down to that feat of how much am I loving myself, and therefore how much can I be loved around the world around me. And so that leads into my next question, which I've always found to be very fascinating. Within your own personal relationship with your anger, your rage, and your relationship with Kali, and a lot of the inspiration of your Phoenix Rising album that you released recently, which is Fire Fuego, Don't Walk, Run, to download that album on Spotify. The link is in the show notes. But also your willingness to be witnessed in the fire of transmutation, with allowing yourself to rage and feel that anger piece in the presence of your relationship, and to rewrite a new way of being witnessed that you're not going to be left for it. In fact, he's actually going to lean in. So I would love to hear a little bit about your process around, there's a majority of your life that it was like,
I won't do that.
And you've got such a beautiful fire inside of you that is formed into your music, that is formed into your healing, that is formed into your voice, that is formed into the way that you love people, is formed into the way that don't mess with my community. Like, I'll love you until like there comes like this, there's injustice or an inequality or whatever. And then all of a sudden the puma comes out and she's like, and so it's a really healthy fire, but it needs to breathe.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like for you to be witnessed in your rage and to be loved for it, and how that's like shifted things within the way that you weave in the world?
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely very, very blessed to be in a partnership for the first time with my husband, Aubrey, where, you know, that energy has come up in a moment of conflict. And, you know, it wasn't, we're both very dramatic. So things get really amplified really quickly, which is great because it just like burns right away and we don't hold resentment and stuff, but we're definitely dramatic. So there's been moments where it's just been like, you know, not able to just like stay in conscious communication, and that fire builds and it's just like, ah. And the way that, you know, for years, in a former partnership, like that was a pretty consistent thing where I felt very often that I was being gaslighted, like a lot. And I didn't really understand at the time. I didn't really get it until I zoomed out and I wasn't hooked in the relationship any longer, but I would go to rage. Like it was like I would be totally fine, and then one thing would set me off, and it was just like, ah. And it was eviscerating. I mean, I could say the most cruelest things that I know will cut. And, you know, I'm not condoning expressing rage in that way because it's destructive. And yet still, the energy needs somewhere to go. And because I had never had a mirror of somebody who could actually hold it, and not saying that's required, but I'm just speaking to my own personal experience, because I never had somebody that could hold it, and actually somebody who I felt was actually trying to get me to go there so they could point at me and then make me the villain. There would be shaming, there would be pointing, like, how could you? And then because I do have a very loving heart, after I would come out of like, you know, the fiery red energy of just like blanking out and just going there, I would actually feel a lot of shame and guilt with myself. And so that kept me in these really unhealthy spirals of like, I'm not going to express anger, you know, I'll try to leave and be avoidant, but then the anger comes and it's like, oh, fuck, okay, I'm like fracturing that part of myself off again. I'm making that part of my natural human emotion unlovable and wrong. And that's a really, really difficult thing to get yourself out of, particularly if you have somebody that's also reflecting you that you don't have the permission to feel your very natural, valid human emotions. And so I had an instance with Aubrey where I was so ashamed that energy came out, and it was a big blow up. It was like our very first one after we got together. And when I came to him and I apologized for, like, I know that energy in myself and I've always had it, and the women in my family have always had it, and that I was, you know, I felt so off, that it was really, really awful to treat him that way, which is also true. And he reframed that and he looked at me and he said, that was not awful. That was awesome. And then proceeded to just express, like, you know, I have a Kali painting up in my studio, and she was a goddess that I was just sort of, a Hindu goddess and a divine feminine archetype that I was just sort of beginning to understand and see and be intrigued by. And he said, if you look at that painting that's in your studio, Kali has her, you know, garland of severed heads around her neck, and she's holding weapons and heads, and there's blood everywhere, and her tongue sticking out, and she's literally standing on top of Shiva, who's also the destroyer. And Shiva's looking up at her like, you go, my sweetheart. Like, there's no, like, and she's standing on top of him, right? And it's not like a, it's not like a, it's not like a negative depiction, but it's actually showing the sacred masculine that can hold the full spectrum. And I'm not saying that you should have destructive rage towards people, because there's actually an evolution that's a lot more helpful. But in that moment when he made me feel that that part of me was also loved and welcome, it changed everything for me. Everything. Because the thing that I feared, the thing that I rejected, the thing that I fractured off no longer had so much force. And I didn't need to go there anymore, because I actually just recognized like, oh, it's actually okay for me to feel angry. I'd like to relate to it in a different way, and I do not ever want to have that kind of expression with my husband, because I love him and I honor him and I respect him. But it's still okay for me to know that that fire is actually really sacred. And it's really intelligent, actually. It is information that is showing you that something needs to change. And that might be within you. That might be in setting better boundaries. Like there's a plethora of things that it might mean, but it's actually really, really sacred information. And so, the next evolution, once I actually felt like this is okay for me to feel, and it's okay for me to have an experience with myself where the energy can simply move. And that led me into having my first experience with a practice that Mama Gina teaches that's called swamping. And swamping is giving yourself the permission to fully be in the energy of anger and rage. And instead of needing to be violent when you're angry and punch pillows or, punch a punching bag, because I've also done that, is like that doesn't really ever complete a cycle of transmutation. It's just blowing off some steam, but it's not the volcano fully erupting and allowing for the energy to feel like it can move in the way that it needs to. And through dance, through actually like moving it through your system, allowing yourself to have that wild and unbridled ferocity that is just like, fuck no. And you can you can have that experience simply with yourself. You don't need somebody else to be there to validate for you that it is okay for you to go there. Simply all you need is music, if you want. I mean, it's makes it more powerful. And if you're interested, my song Into the Fire was made specifically for this. But it is just music and your own permission to go wherever is necessary. And, that's not like hip hop dancing, no, when I go into a rage dance, I mean, I get on the floor, I might kind of punch the air, I might scream and stick my tongue out, but it's just letting it fully go. And how much in life as women are we ever told that is, there's approval in having anger or rage. There's approval for men to feel that way. But we are so no, you should be passive and you should be lovable and you should just, be graceful and be the nice girl. Yeah, that's what's lovable. And we're all in competition for men anyway. So, right, that's exactly what we need to do. I feel through my own process of deeply meeting myself that part of me is so powerful. Because within that is so much passion. Because I care, because I love so much that I'm able to feel the audacity of rage and dance that through my body. It's a sacred, sacred process. It's a sacred gift. And what tends to happen when you allow yourself to feel anger is always protecting something. Anger is trying to take your power back, but it's always protecting something. It's protecting a fear. It's protecting probably really deep grief and suffering.
I heard once, anger is pain's bodyguard.
Yes, exactly. And until you actually, if you're constantly splitting off the anger, you can't get to the deeper thing that is actually, you can't access that. It's impossible to.
So it needs to be felt.
So it needs
to get to the root.
Exactly. You have to feel all the dimensions of the emotion. And that's why it's like, I've recognized that when I've been, more permissible about the full spectrum of my emotions and my being and my nature, like I am woman. I have cycles, I have a moon cycle every single month. I wake up some days and I'm moody as fuck and feeling impatient and fussy. And I have days where I'm radiant and gracious and glorious. And, it's like, but I'm all of it. And the permissibility just feels like this big reclamation. And it can feel so sacred. It can feel like, wow, I have never felt so alive, and I've never felt so deeply. And the tears that come, when you actually get to access you may be angry with your partner for this, that, and whatever, but actually there's a sadness that's in there that you really just want love so bad and it's not working, and that they don't really see you. And it's like when you can touch that part and you can cry those tears of purification, you know way more deeply who you actually are. You know way more deeply what you actually want. And, that is, I think that's, to answer your question about, why I feel really passionate about this in particular, because it's been such an impactful part of my personal expansion and evolution, is like, what if all women did this? Right? I'm in Mama Gina's 6-month pleasure certification, and part of the tools that we work on is like rupture tools. This is not looking at life like, okay, well, this thing happened, so I'm just going to do Ho'oponopono and just try to shift myself into love. That used to be my practice, and that's also beautiful, and it can be really helpful. But what I'd recognize is the part of me that was like spiritually bypassing all the time, actually my very human self. That was why I was constantly going to rage, is because I wasn't meeting myself on all the levels. And to witness in this container, of Mama Gina's course, she wrote the book Pussy, a Reclamation, for any of those of you who
highly recommend. I've recommended it a couple of times, but that book and her teaching shifted my whole relationship with my yoni, my truth.
Yeah.
And so I'm so happy when I heard that you had signed up to the program.
Yeah.
And that you had this space that really could meet you in what it is that your expression was.
Yeah, and it's meeting women in their truth. Mm-hmm. To hold them in the nuances of their full spectrum, mm-hmm. and being a stand for their radiance and their desire, but it's like to witness, what happens in that container where all the women are giving themselves the permission. And these are women from all walks of life. It's not like anyone all over the world, every race, every age, married, divorced, children, like these are all the women all over the world, and just witnessing the powerful transmutation and evolution that is happening because they are stepping forward and giving themselves the permission. Like mm-hmm. it's mind blowing. Mm-hmm. And so me being a stand for, wanting really to be witnessed in this practice. I've posted it on my social media. I have a film called Rise of the Goddess. That's a visual album for my album Goddess Rise. And my song Into the Fire is exactly this. It's an ecstatic dance of rage, mm-hmm. and also grief, mm-hmm. and also triumph to the recognition that you are already whole. Mm-hmm. And so, I feel passionate about sharing it because I feel like for women to be able to meet themselves in the way that I have met myself, mm-hmm. is like beyond anything that I would have thought possible for myself. It's everything that I didn't know that I needed.
Mm-hmm. I get such a gift to be able to witness you honor, listen to, become the student of, and respect your rage. And then in that, allow yourself to be witnessed through Aubrey then saying, that wasn't awful, that was awesome. And then from a close friend perspective, being able to witness that transmutation process through your union has invited me into a reclamation with my own anger, which is not an emotion that I experience as my default go-to. My experience is sadness. Like I get really sad. I fold. Like I stand up and like react. Mine's repression. So I go like really sad to the point where I feel numb. And I don't have any inspiration. I don't have energy. I don't want to connect with anyone. And it wasn't until recently was when I actually felt rage and an injustice and a dishonoring. And you were the first one there in my psychic field when I was feeling that emotion, in the sense of feel it. Go for it, babe.
Go for it.
Like there's certain people that through the embodiment will become a permission slip, even if you're not physically with me, that I call upon or haven't even called upon, but you just show up as a sister with your hand on my shoulder saying like, I want you to feel all of this because I've shown you in my conscious awareness of what is possible to transmute it in a healthy way. And so I gave myself one day to feel the full permission of it. And I went to the kitchen and Liz was in there in the kitchen. And I was like, pissed. And like, I just expressed to her what was coming up for me. And she just looked at me and she goes, I love this version.
It's so sexy.
Love it. She said, she was like, I'm so turned on by this version of you. And in that moment, like it was like my sisters that had not caved or had opened up the permission for them to feel you and her, that you gave yourself permission to feel yourself in those moments, so that in the presence of another woman that is experiencing
all of
this emotion, doesn't shut down or feel uncomfortable by the emotion.
No, she's cheering you on.
Just goes, oh, let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to rage? Let's rage. Do you want to create a space?
More.
Exactly.
More.
Like,
More.
Come on.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
And I think the differentiation that I spoke to Aubrey about, because I called him when I was feeling this emotion, and I actually texted him, which was probably not the best thing, but I was like, bro, what the actual fuck? Like, what is actually happening? Yeah. And we had a conversation straight after that, because I was like, maybe take this off text message. It's probably not the place for my sacred Kali to come out. And so we got on the phone and we understood the differentiation between allowing a fire like a bonfire to burn and to transmute all that isn't serving. But then the second that you start putting a spear into the fire to forge a point and then throw the spear, that creates shrapnel. So it goes in, but then the shards from the spear that take a while after the emotion has gone to actually pick them out. And so this is the difference between the shadow of dishonor and the gift of grace. And this is an archetype in the Gene Key. The shadow of dishonor goes, it's because of you. And you did this, and you did this. And this finger acts as this spear. And if I start saying words, labels, you are a this, you are a narcissist, you are a whatever. It forms this point that then, and this person that is receiving the rage has to then go through a healing journey to take out those shards. And so the difference is to allow the fire to roar, but without forming a point. And that was the journey I've witnessed you go through, is that you formed a point, but then through a deeper level of self-awareness, you've allowed the fire to live on without having to form a weapon while doing it.
Yeah. And another really, I mean, as you're speaking, I'm happy that it went this direction too, because I feel like that's a really, really important reflection for people to understand, because rage can be destructive. You know, like if you're burning and then you just go off and start like talking to the person you're pissed at, like that, it's actually not coming from the full cycle of what Mama Gina's practice is, because the final part of the purification is to move into turn on. And that is the purification process where, you know, just the rage alone is destructive. But if you are raging and it has a little bit of your turn on and your pleasure energy in it, you know, and that just might be through movement. Your grief has a little bit of turn on energy into it. And then your third song is the turn on song. And that's the one that helps to transmute any of the embers or anything that is left. And it's a really, really important, clear part. And, you know, for people who don't know her work, it might sound like, what are you even talking about, right? To do a song that's turn on. I mean, that's just you getting into the power of your sexual energy, your sensual, it doesn't even just need to be sexual, like you're masturbating, but it's just like the way that your body moves. Like if you can move back into a place of your pleasure, like you feel viscerally the shift energetically that's happening in your body. And it is you directly being in authority over, you know, your own energy field and emotions.
And that's a turn on in itself.
Yeah.
You get turned on by actually being able to navigate your emotions as opposed to them just completely
taking you out
on a ride. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing is, it's like this practice is establishing your sense of authority and your sense of choosing, because you can be swept away by any emotion. We're human and they're valid and they're important to feel. Like we didn't come here to just be like, oh, like just sitting here all the time, like everything is great. Like the part of the sacredness of life is just feeling the depth, feeling the contrast, feeling the things that, you know, are icky and painful, but they're making us feel so alive.
And that I've got it all together, and I must be the nice girl or be associated with the label, and that these emotions are deemed not okay. This is where we get sick.
Yeah.
This is where the disease is starting to grow inside of our body.
Because everything is there.
Yeah.
It's in your subconscious, in your unconscious, in your nervous system. You've just done a good job of patterning yourself to shut it off, but it's living in your body. It's there whether you're expressing it or not. And it's exactly what you said. When you don't allow those energies to move, they get stuck and they start making all the keys on your piano dissonant, and that starts to affect the ones around it. Yeah. And then you have disease and illness.
Yeah, it's for the vitality of our being, we need safe spaces to feel our emotions without operating in a binary experience that some emotions are good and some emotions are bad. Some emotions are worthy and some emotions I will never let anyone see in the world. Ultimately, energy is not created or destroyed, only changed in form. So if it doesn't have an outlet, it still exists. It's just changing in form. And so now it's going to go sit somewhere on the body and then fester until it's actually fully felt. And so even just since you've joined the course and since you've had context for your genius, I've witnessed a radiance and a strength in you in the way that you communicate, the way that you're holding yourself, and the way that you're always looking at every single thing in life as an opportunity to learn more about yourself. You've been evolving so fast. And that, when I say the evolving of how I'm receiving it from my lens of perceiving you, is it's a vitality and a glow. It's like the best facial ever. It's like context to allow you to feel everything that's alive and know that all of it is lovable.
Yeah.
That is pure magnetism.
Thank you. I deeply receive that, and I feel it. I feel like the way that I'm relating to life is just different. And another thing, you know, to add to being willing to be brave enough, to be courageous enough to like go into yourself so deeply and to feel this sense of like, with myself, all of me is welcome. How do you show up in relationships? What kind of relationships do you magnetize to your life? If I'm in this, you know, duality of like, these emotions are good and these ones are bad. If anyone else expresses anything that doesn't feel like it fits in the bounds of what I feel is good, you are in judgment of other. That is not what's going to shift this planet. If we can fully reclaim that all of us is welcome, you start mirroring that same sense of love and permission and approval to the rest of the world. Your relationships change. You attract, and I can speak to this from my own experience, insane opportunities that I didn't even. I mean, it's like the elevation of my vibration is palpable in my outer world because my internal landscape is like, okay, like there are all these different parts of me and I'm different day by day, you know? I'm typically, I don't even know, I'm not going to give it a percentage, but most of my life I feel pretty radiant and joyful and hilarious and silly and playful. And then there are times, you know, like when I was actually creating the song Into the Fire, I went through like a really deeply depressive like month and a half that you again also really, really held me through. And so it's, you know, understanding that like we are like the cycles of nature. We're always moving through different things, different seasons. And the more that you can get comfortable but with just being okay with what is, as you always say, the most sacred thing is what is. And you also have, you know, this potentially as a new tool to be like, you know, maybe I really want to sit in this energy right now because it's teaching me something, or maybe I want to take 10 minutes and play 3 songs and go through rage with turn on, grief with turn on, and a turn on song, and I completely shift the course of my entire day because I choose to. Like, how much more powerful do you become? How much more like resourced do you feel? How much more confident do you feel? Like I used to feel like prior to this course with Regina, I would get really stuck in emotions. And I think that's okay sometimes. Sometimes, you know, like I could feel as I was recording Into the Fire, like I needed to be there then. And I had to find my okay with being there. And yet now, you know, having these tools for my moments of rupture, like I can breeze through it in like 10, 15 minutes. I guided Caitlin through this practice at Fit for Service when she was about to do an ecstatic dance and she was not feeling amazing, no sleep, emotionally not feeling good, like sick feeling, all these things, and then guided her through, you know, just being in witness to her practice of moving through it. And she gave one of the best ecstatic dances that I've ever seen her do.
Yes, we had to get her playlist, and then we did a dance the other night. And I currently have bruises on my knees from knee sliding across the dance floor. With 8 of us, and I literally lost my goddamn mind, found my heart to music.
So
and so, Caitlin, these knee slide bruises are in your honor.
So good.
Yeah, but you are equipped now. You have the tools to hold and support your sisters, and to be able to serve that was your greatest challenge.
Oh yeah,
like, this is the epitome of what I live my life by, and the arc of and the theme of the Gene Keys is your greatest challenge is also your superpower. So that was deemed, oh, this is a part of me, this rage, oh, I don't want anyone, it's gonna up and explode. To now all of a sudden then journey of refinement, your journey of self-love, the journey of magnetism based off of that self-love, of allowing yourself to unlock that emotion in a healthy way. And then now you get to hold space for others, for sisters that are like, here, 15 minutes, I promise you'll be a different person on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And your empathy, because you've lived it. You've lived it in the cells of your being. So if there's a sister in your presence that feels like, oh, I can't, you know that emotion. So you can genuinely hold space for it because you felt it in your body, and therefore it allows you to serve from a really relatable, empathic, and genuine place.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That's so exciting the way you articulated it.
That's one way of looking at it.
And it also just like, it clears your channel and how creative I am, because that fire is passion. If you're turning it off because you don't want to feel anger, you're also turning off your passion that you can put into art.
Exactly. Exhibit A behind you, if you can see on this camera. Oh, yeah. This was
gold.
I painted this from 3 days of deep sadness. Like I was like, argh. And that was right in the moment when I went out to the kitchen and was feeling all of the emotions. And I was like, I don't know what do I do with this? Oh, I'm going to alchemize it. I'm going to turn it into a painting that is reminding me to have the courage to speak my truth, and also that my heart is good and my heart is pure, and I feel that. And so the lion was drawn over her throat and her heart as this beautiful woman that looks directly, it's like there's this power and softness and sensuality and gold. And this literally is 10,000 brushstrokes approximately of alchemical process of transmutation, that which is a challenging emotion into something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And now, first podcast, while it's in this like position of almost completion, sitting behind you, and while you're telling me this story, she's like looking over your shoulder, and I'm just like, this is everything. Yeah, exactly. Exhibit A, healthy expression of the rage into beauty.
Yeah.
Mental image.
Yeah. So good.
So
good.
we're at the over the hour. We're getting like, here's the thing. Like, I just could talk to you for at least another 4 hours. There's so many different areas and directions that I would love to go in. And I just think that we will have to do a part 2 of the podcast.
Yeah.
But I do want to just close out this episode with something that has just dropped in recently for the two of us. And we've been in this place of becoming and unlearning and allowing ourselves to be witnessed and allowing our gifts to be shared and finding our unique channel and a unique groove within our offerings. Now it's got to a place where it's like I said before, kind of the symbolic, like I look over to my right shoulder and we've both got our titties out and we're banging on our drums and we've got our piece of paint on and we're moving forward for the revolution of love. Like that's a symbolic expression of it. And then also recently at Fit for Service, you had the idea of like, well, Blue and I are not really actually active on the schedule. Why don't we, we're ready to go. Like put us in, coach.
Yeah.
And so you had this idea of collaborating and combining our gifts, which for you is the sound alchemy, the sound healing, but more so, as I spoke in the intro, is the way that you listen to the space and create a unique frequency based off of what that space is calling in or needs healing with. And I have the ability to utilize my words and the quintessence of my language to explain a deep state of awareness or consciousness or my journeys, and through storytelling, also prayer. Like prayer is the thing that I can soften deeply into and just feel so guided on the lazy river of my Dharma.
That's a good image.
We started weaving them together, and then at the end, we kind of, because I asked you at the beginning, I was like, "What's your intention for this time of us weaving together?" And you just looked at me dead in the eye and you go, "Wow." And I was like, "That's a great intention."
Wow.
And right I forgot I said that. Right at the end.
Wow is my intention.
And I went, "Wow."
So good.
Wow, it was amazing. And so I thought we could just do a miniature version of that to wrap up this podcast. So we can invite individuals to go into a guided journey and little sound healing, and we could just have it as something that you can press play on. Yeah. Because there was guests for Fit for Service that had recorded it, and apparently it ended up going around
the whole community so that they could integrate, because it was so meaningful.
Their integration.
Yeah.
So we haven't actually recorded it, so this will be the first time that we get to a version of it. So before we roll into that part, for all of those that would love to continue to follow your journey, your adventures, download your album, please would you be open to sharing with our audience?
Yes,
how people
please.
can continue to follow you on your journey?
If you want to find me on Instagram, it's at Vylana, Vylana. My artist name is Vylana, so on Spotify, iTunes, every music platform, I'm on there as Vylana. YouTube is youtube.com/Vylana, I believe. It's the same thing all across the board. And then everything that I'm up to is on my website, Vylana.com. I will be having, particularly on my website, a series of offerings that I'm going to be having this next year, things that I would love to weave with you and Caitlin and just all the powerful sisters that are in my life, because the medicine that we have to share and the women who are so deeply ready to experience it, it's a really, really big vision of mine. And so all of that information will be up on my website when it's ready.
She got Vylana.com.
I know.
That's a pretty legit website. And Vylana.
It's really pretty too.
That's a whole different subject. Yay. Perfect. So people can go and follow you and just continue to weave in the essence of what it is that you've been creating from a deep place of many deaths that have allowed you to forge your gifts in the fire, and then for activate the potency of them. And then for all of you that haven't heard her music, I would definitely go check out her album and just allow yourself to set up like a ceremonial space or a place where you are giving yourself the permission of whatever it is that wants to arise within it, in a place that you're not going to be disturbed, that people aren't going to walk in, that you feel like you can really just drift off into the sound of the music and unleash whatever emotion it is that wants to come through, recognizing that her album is not just music, but it's medicine music intentionally set for ceremonial containers to allow yourself to feel in a healthy way. And so it is an alchemical journey, it is a ceremony, it is a meditation, it is a healing opportunity, and it is a safe space for you to be able to feel. So it's so much more than just music.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
and if it would be helpful, it's also a tool. It's a tool kit. It's a tool guide. And so, the Rise of the Goddess film is my expression of me moving through the album. So if that feels helpful to, if you don't feel like you really understand how to work with it, it's a really great kind of just visual way to experience the transmission, audibly and visually. So yeah. Yay!
Like I said before, don't work, run. Go run. Go make a habit. You'll be grateful for it that you did. For my own biased opinion. Okay, so we're going to roll into the sound healing and meditation. And just before we do, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Deja Blu podcast. It's truly such an honor to be able to continue to introduce my sisters that have impacted me in so many ways onto this platform, to be able to have a conversation that ultimately at this point the cameras kind of just melt and we just get to have a chat and then welcome you in on it. And so if you've received any inspiration, support or illumination throughout this episode, then please go ahead and share it on your social media platforms. Tag myself, Vylana, and the Deja Blu podcast so that we can spread this message in a good way with more people and more eyes and more hearts being illuminated into their own safety of their own emotions to genuinely help the healing of this planet. And until next week, thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and definitely stick around for a few more moments so we go and guide you into a guided meditation, prayer and sound activation to support you in your mundane moments to be filled with magic. Sending you so much love. Until next week. Today's sponsor of this podcast is Becoming Prosperous, which is a 4-week online self-guided course aligning you with what it truly means to live a prosperous life. So if you want to check out the link in the show notes here on YouTube and also on all podcasting audible platforms.